Hello, we're pleased to have Milton Campbell from the Urban Youth Workers Institute join us today. He is the Southeast Regional Director, and we're pleased to have him with us today on Youth Universe. Thank you for being with us.
Glad to be with you. Excited to be here.
Glad you're able to join us during this season, and would love for you to just share a little bit about how did you get involved in the work of youth ministry?
Okay. Well, I started off as a youth pastor at Elizabeth Baptist Church in Southwest Atlanta, and definitely was great training ground, great opportunity to really grow. I always knew I had a connection and a love for the next generation for youth. But didn't know exactly how I was going to be able to live that out. And so when that opportunity became available at Elizabeth, I joined the staff there, and I was on staff there for about 7.5 years before connecting with UYWI, Urban Youth Workers Institute.
Okay, man, that's a significant time to dedicate your life to working with youth ministry, particularly in urban ministry. So often when I speak to people about youth and urban ministry, many people look at that as something that's entry level, stepping stone, and most people, from what I understand, either time out or burn out over just a 2-3 year period. What are your thoughts on that as far as burnout and how do you manage that, as well as looking at youth and urban ministry as a stepping stone or entry point into something?
I think, honestly, that's definitely a hot button for me at times, because I truly see it as, it's a unique calling. I see it just as valuable as any other type of work, any other type of ministry. And so I think you do a youth a disservice when you kind of show up just for a time being, or just a pastime, or to get experience per se until the next better opportunity comes along. So my advice and encouragement, even to those who feel like, man, like I see it as kind of like a role for me to play, for me to get the big seat role or that next opportunity. I say kind of almost shame on you, but also probably you should look at doing something else. Okay. But I definitely see it as a great opportunity. It's something you got to feel called to. This generation, they need people who are authentic, people who have a passion and a commitment to really be invested in their lives, because you got to be in it for the long haul. It's not something you can do in a year and expect exponential results, but really you got to be willing to weather the storm and even stay involved in their lives when sometimes, this generation, the youth, are pushing you away.
Well, I know one of my favorite authors is Howard Thurman, and he has a text or a book called Disciplines of the Spirit. And I know that some of the things that you've done earlier in your life gave you a set of disciplines that allow for you to relate with youth and young adults and to be able to stay in there for the long haul. Share a little bit about your background, some of the things that you've done in the way of athletics that I believe may have possibly prepared you to do the type of work that you're doing today.
Yeah, definitely. My athletic upbringing and just my upbringing in general, it laid a huge foundation in me being able to have that discipline. I was a track guy, so I started running track at the age of 8 here in Atlanta. Matriculated through Douglas High School and went on to on a track scholarship to University of North Carolina. And then I did about 10 years of professional track and field as well. And so, of course, track is an individual sport, and it's one of those things where, hey, almost a lot of times you determine if, you're going to give your best, if you're going to show up for practice. But at the same time, if you don't show up, if you don't give your best, it's gonna tell the story on the day of competition. And so I think from that in itself, it's always just it really helped to, I guess, solidify a foundation of discipline just in my life, just knowing that, hey, I'm the one who kind of determined the paths. Of course, with God's help, I'm the one who kind of has to make the decision to show up every day and be committed. And I think that definitely has played a huge part in my development and even just the way I think.
Okay. What would you say are some of the disciplines from your practice regimen? Something you just said about showing up and being ready for the competition. How do you translate some of that over into working with youth and young adults? Being able to show up and being ready for that competition, because we are in a global world. We got to be competitive.
You're right. Great question. For one, I think one parallel is track and field is a global sport. Believe it or not, it's the second most popular sport in the world, and that's the soccer. So it's a global sport. So a lot of my time was spent across seas, over in Europe. I've been on I've been to 30 plus countries during the course of my life. So just being able to be involved and engaged in different cultures, and yet be able to come back to my context and see, look, we're not as different as a lot of times we think we are.
That's right.
That's one transferable principle. I think another thing is, because you're going to these different parts of the world, you never can predict the weather. And so you always had to be willing to make adjustments in your race strategy and how you competed and even your intake of food, because of course in different customs and cultures, the food is different. So all those things, it caused me to be kind of, adaptable. So I think that's definitely a trait you have to have when you work with youth. You have to be willing, because things, no matter how great of a planner you are, there's going to come a time when things will not, volunteers don't show up, or a kid gets sick, or, just a lot of things that I think they're transferable, where as a leader, you have to be adaptable. And quick on your feet and able to respond. I think also just in my travel and my track experience, just a discipline of just being able to just be committed and consistent. I think that was a big one. A lot of times, I had a lot of success, but at the same time, I had a lot of failures. So it was one of those things where in track, it really taught me, no matter how things are going, no matter how disappointed you may be, hey, the next race can be the next opportunity. It can totally turn things around. And so I saw that in track. So I think it also transferred in my ministry life, or in my work with youth, where I saw that sometimes it was dark and dismal, where it seems like, man, there's no way I'm gonna get through to this young person. And then the next day or the next week, it's like they're a totally different person. And so, but it was because I was consistent and committed that it allowed me to experience those type of encounters.
Good deal, man. You mentioned something about the development, and you spent time, obviously, in over 30 countries, and had an opportunity to experience a lot of different cultures. How did that shape you as a person?
It shaped me in a lot of different ways. Here I am, I was a kid who grew up in a single parent household, and we weren't extremely poor, but we struggled. And so my mom was extremely supportive. She was an educator, and she really just kind of pushed us beyond our current context, our current environment. And so I think just that exposure, me being able to go to all these different places, it really opened my eyes up. And I think it did a couple things. One, it helped ground me, because I realized, like, wow, man, what a privilege given from where I've come from. That's one thing. But then secondly, I think it just really helped me to see life beyond just my box. And I started to see that, man, people are not as different. Yes, they are different, but at the same time, there's a common thread that kind of knits us all together in some ways. And that really kind of helped me to understand, like, wow, even, in Europe, or, just the different places I've been, just being able to embrace those different cultures and see just, wow, they're not as different. Yeah, we look different. Yeah, we may speak a different language, but man, there's a unique knit that there's a place of commonality that we can come together and work together and even love one another beyond all our differences.
Absolutely. And that common thread is central, in my opinion, to humanity. And as we talked earlier about, the world is more interdependent than ever before. With those common areas, how has that helped shape your ministry?
A great statement I kind of live by says that God wastes nothing in your development. And that's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think that is so true. And I look at just all of my experiences, the good, some I love and I'm so thankful for, and some I wish I could erase. But yet I appreciate them, because I think they help me to become the man that I'm still becoming. So I look at each pivotal point. I look at, like I say, my season at Douglas High School, and just the relationships. A lot of my best friends, even still today, I met them at Douglas High School. And so just it played a huge part in just kind of pushing me and preparing me for what was next. I look at me coming, honestly, from a very a minority, all black context, which was my high school, going to the University of North Carolina, a very white suburban context, and how that really just opened up my eyes. And it was like, wow, this is totally different. But I was so appreciative and thankful for that experience, because it helped me to see the world beyond, the box I was in at Douglas, unfortunately, in some ways. And then going on and again being able to travel across seas, it was huge, because even that, just being able to just meet and experience different cultures, all those have been just intricate as far as in my development and my shaping, I guess, kind of my biblical worldview of my faith, because now I see life from just I guess a more grand picture. I'm just trying to think of how to phrase it, but all those have been essential to me living out my calling, and me being able to just interact and even just share my faith even with people who normally I probably would not have any points of commonality with, or any points of connection with. I'm able to say, hey, I can express and even meet people and love people who are different and think different than how I think.
At what point did you start feeling a sense of either urgency or stirring that you knew that you wanted to do something in the way of working with youth and young adults?
I think honestly, it's and again, like you said, it's funny how the experiences that you've been involved in, or how those places where a lot of times I think I was even clueless to how God was kind of working behind the scenes. But in it, I think the pivotal point kind of came probably about 2001, was when kind of the light bulb kind of went off.
Okay.
And it kind of really clicked in. I had been serving in the school, had been competing professionally, had been doing camps and things of that nature, just in athletics, and all of them were like geared towards youth. And I think the pivotal moment really came was when I was at Elizabeth and my pastor was like, hey, we want to bring you on staff to help build and grow and even full time as a youth leader. And I'm like, wow, like that's not me. I mean, that's not, and that's when it kind of clicked. And I had family members that kind of really came alongside me and just helped point out like how I had been working with youth even prior to then. You know, here I was, you know, working as an educator. Here I was, you know, as an athlete, but also still spending a lot of my time coaching and working with youth in some capacity. And they started pointing out those experiences, and that's when it was like, okay, God has been preparing me for this. I'm ready for this. And I always knew, and I think, again, looking at my mom and how she poured her life into students as an educator, I think that definitely was instrumental in helping me to identify and recognize my calling. So I think all of those played a significant role in helping the light bulb to finally switch on and me realize, okay, man, God has been preparing you for such a time as this.
That's a good thing. And you were responsive, obviously,
Yeah.
and responsible with that. You mentioned 2001. 2001 was a pivotal period for our nation, particularly with the events of 9/11.
Yeah.
And I know that the young people that we work with have primarily grown up in a post 9/11 context, which allows for us to have all types of conversations around faith and equality and diversity and globalization and all of those different areas that are really part of our society. How has shaping and doing ministry in a season post 9/11, what was that like for you? How did you deal with some of the conversations? What are some of your thoughts as far as what is needed in that type of environment in the way of faith?
Great question. I would say part of it has been, like you say, well, kind of as you shared, we live in a more global, conscious, culture now. And I think, our young people, they're exposed to so much. My faith, my belief is Christianity. I say that unashamedly. But at the same time, that does not mean I can't love people who are not Christians, who think differently. And I think the essence of our faith, it is to love. It is to be that example. It is to meet the needs of others. And so I think from that, I think that's kind of what this generation is looking for. It's, they're looking for a faith that is, I think, it's lived out and expressed through works. I think the days are gone, from the generation where you could just kind of, preach and shout and all the other things, probably that my generation grew up experiencing at times. But I think now this generation, in order to be relevant, they really want to see, hey, show me how to live out my faith beyond just a Sunday morning or a great message or, or wherever they're really looking for, somebody to show them how to put feet to their faith. And I think that's kind of one of the things we've learned, and we try to do at times. In my role as a youth pastor, was like, hey, let's show these young people how to live it out.
Sure.
Let's show them how to love, how to demonstrate it by loving their neighbors and really just being an example of what this faith is all about.
That's exactly right. Well, Brother Milton, I appreciate you being here with us, and we'll look forward to you coming back and sharing more. I really like the concept of doing life together. And so later this year, would want you to come back and we can explore more ways in which you're leading and allowing other young people and young adults to do life together.
Wow.
Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
My name is Rob Hughes, and thank you for joining us. I'm pleased to be here today with Mr. Chris McCord of Moving in the Spirit and also of the historic South Atlantic Civic League. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Rob.
Glad that you're with us, and we are excited about all the great things that we hear about what you're doing with Moving in the Spirit, as well as some of the work that you're doing as one of the leaders in the South Atlanta neighborhood. I want to start off with your work with Moving in the Spirit. If you could share a little bit more about what is Moving in the Spirit and what is your role within Moving in the Spirit?
Absolutely. Moving in the Spirit is a youth development organization. We use dance as a vehicle to teach workplace values to kids 3 to 18. The beautiful thing about Moving in the Spirit is it's been around 25 years. It's got a couple of national awards and great donor base, and we've danced in the White House twice.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
Okay. And you've been a part of Moving in the Spirit for how long?
I've been around Moving in the Spirit for 21 years. So I'm actually
21.
an alumnus. I'm a part of the alumni base for Moving in the Spirit. Started when I was 12. Saw them at a Boys and Girls Club performing. And at the end of the performance, they said, hey, if you want to come down and learn a quick combination, come on down and we'll teach you. And of course, out of all my friends, I was the only one that went down and just had a blast. And I got Dana's card and called her every single week to make sure I didn't miss my audition opportunity.
You said that it's a youth development and dance organization.
Yes.
In what ways, what are some of the program aspects of Moving in the Spirit?
Well, one thing you need to know is dance is a universal language. I work with boys specifically, so my program is called Men in Motion. I've got about 16 young men in my program, and we use things like capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial arts. We use African dance, hip hop, modern dance. Those are all forms that are pretty comfortable for boys. And not that we're trying to be like the girls, like really the stuff that we're doing is a celebration of boyhood.
Okay.
And so a lot of the stuff they get a chance to do, they're excited about showcasing a jump, a spin, a hop, a slide, and things of that nature. But in essence, like I said, dance is a universal language. And so we use the discipline that comes from dance, the commitment that it takes to dance, the accountability that it takes to dance, and we turn those into values that we teach them. And so it gives them an opportunity to exercise those values as they go through our class. A lot of times the kids we have a really low self-awareness, and they also have low self-esteem. By the time they finish a 9-month program with us, their self-esteem increase somewhere in the 30 to 50 percentile. It just depends on the kid and where they are. We use the Pearson-Harris process to do our evaluations.
Okay, excellent. So you use dance to help build self-esteem, as well as specifically working to building up and just essentially building up young men. Giving them physical as well as mental, and also some spiritual discipline.
Absolutely. We also do a lot of academic support with them as well. I do somewhere between 10 to 15 school visits a year. Sometimes I do more than that. It just depends on how the program year is going. I'll get a call from a parent. Miss Chris, I can't get out work. Can you go check on, such and such? And I can't use any names, but I've definitely taken out, time in my day to go check. Let me go do a drop surprise visit to such and such, and I can't tell you the looks on the faces I get when I walk through that door of the classroom. So
I'm sure they're surprised.
Definitely.
Yeah. How much is that a part of the program, as far as you building relationships with the young people, specifically the young men themselves, and them having your presence in their life? What does that mean for them as young men, and what does that mean for you as a person?
Well, it's a huge deal in the fact that they know someone is there that actually cares and that's ready to support them. A lot of times, for a lot of young men in general, there comes a times when they have to vicariously learn. And because of that, it's very important that they have some mentor to turn to.
Some of the young men come from different backgrounds. Some may come from two-parent backgrounds where there's two parents in the home, and some may come from single-parent backgrounds where there's only one parent in the home. So I'm sure that the work that you and Mr. James and Mr. Julio that you're doing is really important in the lives of these young men. What would you say about the types of character development that takes place within the disciplines of the program? And what are some ways in which you work specifically to develop those areas?
Well, let me just say this in general. Mentorship is extremely important. It's something that I feel very connected with, in the sense that there is no other better investment, in my opinion, than to invest into the lives of tomorrow's leaders. In addition to that, you need to know that recruitment happens whether we do it or not. Sometimes these gang members and these drug dealers are recruiting these guys too. So for me, I try to get on the front end and recruit them before those guys start looking at them, because at the end of the day, the drug dealers and the gang members are looking at them like dollar signs, because they know that they're vulnerable to that. They know that they have a sense of belongingness and things of that nature. So if I catch them on the front end and give them another purpose versus having that as their purpose, it's a better swing, if you will, kind of get them before they get too terrible. But as far as their character development, a lot of it is, once again, exposure. A lot of it is exercise, in a sense that if I don't give you an opportunity to know what the difference between wrong and right is, you'll never know. So, you know, a lot of times these boys are coming through and they might make a mistake and not know that it's a mistake. Well, I did that because I saw it on TV. Or I did that because, you know, my uncle did it and he didn't have any consequences. Well, your uncle didn't get caught that time.
Sure.
So there are consequences, and you just didn't get a chance to see it on that side of it. So let's talk through why you shouldn't make a decision like that, AKA robbing a bank, AKA taking a piece of candy. Oh, it's not a big deal, it's just a piece of candy. Well, no, it's a big deal, because what you're doing is you're taking something that you didn't earn.
That's right.
Now, if you really wanted to, I'm sure if you talk to the shop owner and maybe help him clean up the stock room, he might give you that candy for free. Anything's possible. You just got to put it out there in a way that you can handle it.
You spoke about earlier that dance is a universal language, and we live in a global workforce. We live in a global society. What ways have dance allowed for you to connect with people through it being a universal language, and why is that important for young people to have that as a skill?
Well, I'll say this. For me, I've had an opportunity through moving in the spirit to see every major city in the United States. I've actually had an opportunity to go overseas a couple times.
Okay.
In Eastern Europe, in a wine cellar somewhere outside in the country of Eastern Europe, I was sitting there having a conversation with someone through dance, 18 years old. So it is a universal language in the sense that I can even have this conversation in the first place at 18 years old with someone that I have no idea how to speak Budapest at all. Well, we were in Budapest. Maybe I'm wrong on the language that they speak, but in Budapest, had no idea what was being said, but through dance, we were able to have a very distinct conversation about the world and what we can do to change it. Dance in general for me is a kinetic thing. It's a kinetic opportunity or a kinetic activity. And so what that means is you get an opportunity to move your body, feel energy coming through you, and there's also an opportunity to be creative a part of that as well. So with those three things together, that's why I feel like kids should have an opportunity to really dive into it, because they can express themselves in a sense that's healing. They can express themselves in a sense that they can learn about different ways of learning. Story for me is that I'm a kinesthetic learner, and a lot of my boys are. So I don't do really well sitting in the classroom listening to a lecture. I actually do really well if I put it in movement. So sometimes, you know, having those creative activities give you an opportunity to kind of understand and figure out yourself, just because you've been able to be exposed to the arts.
And that's important to learn. And you mentioned, is it kinetic learner or kinesthetic learner?
Kinesthetic learner.
Kinesthetic learner. And so that means?
That means that if I put if I put items to movement, I'll never forget it. For instance, what happened for me is one day I was in school and just had terrible grades, you know, when I was coming up through school, 17, 19s, 20s, and all my homework exercises. One day I took a break from what I did in dance and I related it to my schoolwork. Took it back in, 98. Whoa, you must be cheating. How's this happening? Did it again, another nice grade. And so what ended up happening, I pulled Dana to the side like, hey, I know this is kind of weird, but I'm getting good grades now. What do you think is happening? Chris, you're a kinesthetic learner.
Wow.
So you taking that break and figuring out that it's, you know, you can relate it to your schoolwork, it's helping you retain the information. And so from there, I was able to be out, because I was an SLD student back then, slow learning disability with a reading deficiency.
Wow.
So I was able to now test out of the SLD program as I graduated from high school. I have a college degree from Georgia State with the Robert Mack Business School. So all that happened because I found dance at an age of 12. So.
And that's a powerful story.
Absolutely.
The fact that you were able to discover your learning style through the use of dance, and how many other young men who are discouraged by the school process and their performance in school could possibly do better by being exposed to various learning styles that incorporate I have to get the word right, The
Kinesthetic learning, yes.
Kinesthetic learning.
And you're right. I mean, one of the beautiful things about moving in the Spirit is we also utilize a tool that we call Sunshine.
Okay.
It's a verbal affirmation tool, and where we're really, because stats tell us for every negative thing we hear, it takes 5 to bring it back to positive. And so what we're doing is giving an opportunity for these kids to hear positive things about themselves, giving them really constructive criticism that's on the lighter side, on the positive side, to kind of help them gain that balance again, if you will. And so that was something that happened for me. Dana pulled me to the side one day and she told me that I was smart. And I thought she was lying because all my other teachers said I was dumb.
Wow.
And so because I was SLD students, I was frustrating a lot of my students, my kids, my teachers, because I wasn't retaining information and getting information as fast as the other students.
But that wasn't your learning style.
It wasn't my learning style. So that was the miscommunication, if you will, is that my learning style was totally different. And that's why it was happening versus anything else.
That's a significant breakthrough.
Yeah,
one last question that I would like to ask related to moving in the Spirit. You mentioned earlier about the energy that flows through dance. You mentioned the power of movement. How is spirituality addressed in the name, moving in the Spirit, as well as the faith components that come through from an individual, whether the combination of their physical, their mental, and their spiritual abilities, and how through moving in the Spirit you bring all of that together?
Okay. We are a 501c3 organization.
Okay. Okay.
So we do not pull kids to the side and speak on that too heavily, but once again, vicariously, they get a chance to learn how we walk our life. And you know, my walk is the walk of a good walk.
Okay.
And you know, when I say energy, I do mean that in the sense that there is a spirit behind every movement. There is a spirit behind my intention of showing up at those schools. There is a spirit in the sense that I believe in positive energy, and I believe that the fact that me being a part of your life is going to help you make better choices. And so that is the spiritual element, if you will, behind it. There are some Christian values in the roots of moving in the Spirit and the foundation of moving in the Spirit, in the sense that there's commitment, discipline, respect. All those values Adam and Eve had to put in play as well when they were coming through the world as well. So that's more so, it's more me walking my life and them seeing it.
I want to thank you for joining us for this edition of Youth Universe. A couple more things. I know that you have a couple things coming up in the way of reaching out further into the community. Can you share briefly what some of those opportunities are? Check
out our website. We'd love to have you come through summer camp. And last but not least, our open enrollment and open house is going to be August 25th. Once again, check out the website for actual times and locations on that as well.
Well, it sounds like a lot of powerful and positive things are taking place through moving in the Spirit in South Atlanta.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for joining us today.